What's the deal with laziness? It's got a bad rap, but have you actually tried it? Have you actually tried doing nothing? Here are 3 questions you can ask yourself to see if you can benefit from the science of doing less. 1. Search. Do you spend more time searching for new information before applying what you already know? 2. Start new projects. Do you work on starting new projects and coming up with new ideas without stopping or closing the projects that you're already working on? 3. Juggle more. Are you juggling more tasks now than in the past? If you answered yes to any of these 3 questions, you too can benefit from the science of less. What's the biggest tragedy to come from a desire to do more? If you rode a bike like I did in the 80s or 90s, as a child I had stabilizers on my bike, and this allowed my parents to send me out to go and play and without worrying about me falling. And I didn't have to worry about falling because I had stabilizers. But if you see kids today, they ride on balance bikes, which are far more effective for kids to learn. And this comes from our innate desire to add when it comes to solve problems. We decided to make riding a bike safer by adding stabilizers alongside pedals. But if you look at balance bikes, which work phenomenally well to encourage kids to not just stay balanced and safe, but also learn how to ride a bike later on. By removing the pedals and the stabilizers, kids are able to learn far quicker. They're also safe because you can just put your feet on the ground. So there's a paper published in Nature which summarizes a series of experiments which demonstrates our innate desire to add instead of subtract or when it comes to problem solving. So we have this so-called additive bias which pushes us to add more instead of subtracting, even though subtracting in many instances can be a better idea. And some of this work is best demonstrated from research by Klotz, who works at the intersection of, he's a professor of engineering at the University of Virginia, and he works at the intersection of engineering and behavioral science to develop systems of sustainable solutions. He's written a book on the subject, Subtract. Here's a quote from his book, Subtract. Subtraction is the act of getting to less, but it's not the same as doing less. In fact, getting to less often requires doing, or at least thinking, more. In one of the experiments from the paper, participants were asked to improve a mini golf course, and they were given 3 options. 1, they could add elements. For example, they could add a windmill to make the course more fun or exciting. 2, they could subtract elements. So they could take out maybe a sandbank, which made the course annoying. Or 3, they could do neither. And they could do maybe simple changes such as reversing the course of the track, the start and the end, so without adding or subtract elements. And inevitably, most participants chose to add elements to improve the course, and very few participants chose to subtract or remove elements to make the course easier or more fun to play at. So the Lego block experiment was another experiment from the Nature paper. What they asked participants to do was to stabilize a Lego structure, either by adding or removing blocks. The instructions given to the participants were: you will earn $1 if you successfully complete this task. Each piece that you add costs 10 cents. Participants were also randomly assigned to this other subtraction group, which heard one more instruction from the experiment. But removing pieces is free and costs nothing. Only 41% of the participants chose to remove a block to stabilize the structure, even though it was the better option. However, in the condition where participants were given the subtraction cue, but removing pieces is free and costs nothing, 61% of the participants chose to remove a block to stabilize the structure. This research is amazing because it highlights a few facets. One is our default of negating subtraction as an option or a viable solution. However, we're able to nudge people through simple reminders that subtraction costs nothing, and these simple reminders can bring us back into looking at subtraction as a viable option. 3 lessons from the science of doing less. Lesson 1. Subtraction culture. We live in a society where we're rewarded in organizations to add more and more. For products, we're rewarded to add new features. As marketeers, we're rewarded to add new campaigns. But very often are we rewarded for doing less. So when we think about a subtraction culture, how might we remind ourselves and remind others around us in our teams? If we're managers, how do we create a culture of subtraction? Second lesson, removing sludge. I like to describe sludge as the evil cousin of nudge. Nudge is a concept in behavioral economics around small, subtle changes in the environment which pushes us gently in one direction, which is in our best interest. Sludge does quite the opposite. It pushes us in a direction which isn't necessarily in our best interest. You can think of subscriptions as a example of sludge. It's quite easy to get a 3-month free Spotify subscription, but then when it comes to canceling a subscription, there's friction in the way, which makes it difficult. Quite often we enter credit card details, get the subscription, and we forget to cancel. Other examples of sludge is we quite often create benefits for people who are in need, and we make it really difficult for people who are both time poor and resource poor to actually claim these benefits. So the idea of sludge or removing sludge is to focus on your processes, look at the points of friction that are coming in the way for people to reach the outcomes they want to achieve. Third lesson, simplification. Keep it simple, keep it silly. 3 bullet points sometimes is all it takes. Just like these 3 bullet points, a culture of subtraction, removing sludge, and keeping it simple are 3 ways in which we can use the science of less to do more.